I'm going to briefly introduce each panelist, and they are titans in their own right. I really encourage you to study their bios, learn about them, see what they're posting on LinkedIn, because they're pretty crazy. We're going to jump into some questions, and they're not going to be your usual questions. I'm going to ask them to sort of play along and communicate and jump on top of each other's answers, because they all have such incredibly rich perspectives to share. We'll take audience questions if we need to. We see a burning question, happy to accommodate. We're all friends here. We support Chicago innovation or Chicago innovation. We're all friends. And then to wrap it back, I'm going to turn it back to Luke and team to transition to the reception. And I have been told that some of the beer is actually THC beer. I don't know what to do with that, but now you know. So I'm going to call up our first guest, which is speaker is Glenn Tullman. Glenn is a serial healthcare entrepreneur who keeps building companies that make the rest of us wonder if we're using our time wisely. No kidding. I asked him what he does for fun, and I was like, Instagram? He said, no, never. I compete in triathlons, which I was like, of anything being fun, that's not it, but that's Glenn. He's founded and sold Livongo for $18.5 billion. He is the founding partner of one of the highest returning VC funds in Illinois, Seven Wire Ventures, which also has one of the most amazing female partners, Alyssa, who is out and about and killing it with deals. As CEO of Transcarent, he's on a mission to make healthcare, to make it easy for people to access high quality, affordable health and care. If you think disruptive is overused, you have not met Glenn Tullman, and you have not read his manifesto on behalf of Transcarent of what needs to happen to healthcare in the United States. Glenn Tullman. Tom Sosnoff. Tom is a trailblazer in the online brokerage industry, driving innovation and financial education for investors of all levels. In many respects, he's trying to democratize who gets to get access to really interesting, high risk, but valuable asset classes. He offers up his expertise in the options market as co-host of Tasty Live Live, airing daily on the Tasty Live network. A former floor trader who probably can deal with a lot of yelling. Tom became one of Chicago's most well-known serial entrepreneurs in fintech when he built a breakthrough options trading platform, Thinkorswim, later sold to TD Ameritrade for a cool $750 million. Leveraging over 20 years of experience as a market maker for the Chicago Board Options Exchange and one of the original OEX traders in the S&P 100 index pit, Tom pursued his vision to educate retail investors in options trading and building a superior trading platform and a brokerage firm that specialized in options. With that vision in mind, Tasty Live was founded in 2001. 6 years later, because 7 would have taken too long, the retail brokerage Tasty Trade launched and was sold to IG Group for $1 billion. Great hair, unbelievable personality, Tom. Phyllis Lockett. Phyllis is a powerhouse at the intersection of innovation, education, and equity. As the founder and former CEO of Leap Innovations, she's brought startup speed to school systems, connecting ed tech tools with classrooms to personalized learning and close opportunity gaps at scale. Before that, she led New Schools for Chicago, raising over $100 million to reimagine public education. Raising money is hard. Raising money as a Black woman is hard. Raising $100 million for education is harder. It's incredibly impressive. She's one of those rare leaders who can talk policy, tech, and human impact without skipping a beat. And somehow she makes it all look easy. If LinkedIn had a page for purpose, it'll look a lot like Phyllis Lockett. Luke Saunders. I've known Luke for many, many years, so this is exciting to get to be on a panel with him. He built Farmer's Fridge. Luke Saunders built Farmer's Fridge on a radical idea. His wife is here, by the way. Just a quick shout out to all the partners of all these founders, because it takes a team to make the dream work, so congratulations. It's awesome you're here. Luke built Farmer's Fridge on a radical idea. Healthy food should be as easy to grab as a soda. His small fridges and smarter supply chain now feed busy humans across the country, proving that you can scale both mission and margin. Farmer's Fridge has raised $175 million and now operates a network of over 1,500 smart vending machines across the United States, delivering fresh, healthy meals, tasty, if I may say so, in locations such as airports, offices, hospitals, and universities. I always get a kick out of seeing a Farmer's Fridge vending machine, which I now see everywhere, because I'm like, I know the guy who invented it. And now you will too. Luke. Last but not least, Elise Awad. She's the trailblazing president and CEO of DeVry University, local hometown pride. The first woman to hold this position in the institution's 96-year history. Starting her DeVry career as an admissions advisor in 2004, she climbed the ranks thanks to sheer determination and a knack for transformative leadership. She is rewriting the playbook for how DeVry will help adult learners thrive in a digital world. Recognized as a Chicago Titan for 2 consecutive years, she's not just breaking glass ceilings, she's remodeling the building. Elise. You all already have accolades. You've already won all the awards. You are recognized in every way possible, but let's prove that you're mere mortals. Let's start with what makes you tick. Can you tell the audience one thing about you that might surprise them? And we're going to start with Glenn and go down, and then the next question we'll start with Elise and come back. So Glenn, surprise us. We'll switch. You take that one. I'll take this one.
I don't know how to turn a microphone on, apparently.
I got you.
For the last 35 years, I eat a pint of ice cream at minimum every day.
Did not see that coming. Did not see that coming. Tom, rad guy, fintech.
I can't beat that, but I live in the Ravenswood area, and so I wanted to have a coffee shop near where I live, so I built a coffee shop, but I've never had a cup of coffee. You said surprise me.
2 for 2. Well done.
You beat mine.
Phyllis, no pressure, but they're slaying.
I'm pretty boring.
False.
I just, you know what? I write prayers. I love to write, and I, try to take 30 minutes every morning to meditate, give gratitude, glory to God, and it really sparks my ideas and innovations. That's what I do. Nowhere near as fun as those.
No surprise. Purpose, mission, service, and everything you've done, not just building and hustling, but that is perhaps surprising that you do that, but not surprising if you really think about who you are. Luke.
I have 2 hairless cats at home. And the reason is because my son is allergic to dogs, so I Googled which cats are the best compared to dogs. Sorry to the cat lovers, but I also didn't want cat hair everywhere, and they look really odd, but they're cute.
And Elise.
Okay, so there's folks that know me in the room, and those that know me know I'm pretty stubborn, so tell me I can't do something and I will prove you wrong. I have 10 screws in a plate in my left ankle, and after reconstructive surgery, I decided I was gonna be a marathon runner. So triathlete, maybe that's next for me, triathlons. I've run 2 marathons, running Chicago this year for my 3rd, and have run 13 half marathons. So I love running.
Isn't that like the ultimate statement of willingness to put one foot in front of the other and grind through all kinds of pain? I mean, I think there's no better entrepreneurial analogy than that. Next, we're going to go to talking a little bit about innovation, and everybody, I'd love for you to answer. It is spawned both by opportunity and adversity. Unfortunately, Jellyvision is best known for pivoting, and everyone's like, how did you know? And I'm like, because we were going to die if we didn't. Sometimes, though, it comes from, I see a better path. Sometimes it comes from I have to or we're in trouble. Since the pandemic, the world seems to be more volatile than ever. How are you not just navigating business, but staying innovative in the face of constant and certain uncertainty?
So during the pandemic, the world was crazy, but who thought that after the pandemic, it would get crazier?
Not me.
I like to call it the Banny or VUCA environment, and we're living it every single day. For higher education, during the pandemic, I mean, our worlds were disrupted, right? We had to figure out how to do everything in a digital world. And I think there's some good that came out of that. I think online education, flexible education, became more and more the norm and more accepted. But I think there's a lot of mental health issues that came out of that as well. So student support, student care, a lot of those things became more and more important for institutions like ours. Post-pandemic, in a volatile world, I can't stand opening any article in the morning just to read the headline. It's always something that seems so depressing, between workforces that are shrinking, technology that's disrupting jobs at a rapid pace. And for us, I see that there's opportunity in that. We've got to meet learners where they're at, meet employees who are displaced where they're at, try to figure out how to lean into this sort of skills-first world where learning is no longer, or education is no longer terminal. It doesn't stop. You've got to continue to upskill and reskill. And so I see that as an opportunity in education. Continue to find ways to upskill and reskill those anywhere in their journey, whether it's late in life, early in life, whether they have a PhD or not. I mean, that's just the way it is.
But it seems like you're really embracing understanding the whole consumer. The fact that you're talking about providing education, but also understand the need for mental health, you must super be listening.
Yes.
To your consumer.
Watching the signals, listening, paying attention. I like to say we are at DeVry outcomes obsessed. We look at data constantly because we want to know how to get ahead and make sure that we're serving learners the way they need to be served. And that is constantly changing in a VUCA world.
So Luke, I think, had a lot of business delivering food to offices. And then there was a shelter-in-place mandate and people stopped going to offices. And he had a bunch of food that would spoil if he couldn't figure out what to do with it, like tons, right? Nothing but pivots and reinvention and reinvigoration since then. But how do you keep at it?
Good question. It's been 12 years. And I think, it's the looking back and just seeing how much progress we make. And so I remember we had one fridge and I was chopping lettuce actually like not many buildings down from here in a shared kitchen. And then I did an event today with the team at our facility where we're making tens of millions of meals. And so just that progress really keeps you motivated. And I meet customers like just walking in here. Someone said, hey, I bought your food all the time in college. And that really was so helpful to me. So I get a lot of pep talks every day, which is great. Part of being a consumer business. I also get a lot of feedback like, hey, that salad wasn't as good as I want it to be. But it's that constant feedback. And then just the team that I get to work with, like they keep getting smarter and harder working. And I'm like, this is awesome. We're solving new, bigger problems. So it's never like the same thing over and over again.
Phyllis.
So in the context of the pandemic and, currently in terms of what's going on, every single industry was able to pivot except for K-12 education. It's ridiculous. And so I just got radically obsessed with, how do we think about transcending the school building and leveraging a broader learning ecosystem to create more access for learning so it doesn't stop, right? So it can be more democratized. So we started doing pilots in 8th grade classrooms here and in the northern suburbs by connecting ecosystems of out-of-school learning, of virtual learning, of edtech tools to understand how we could create a new learning pathway for young people that is not solely dependent on the physical space of a school. So who was it, Rom, that said, "No, let no crisis go unattended," or
Churchill.
"Be wasted"? Oh, that's Churchill. Let no crisis go to waste, I guess was Rom.
Yep.
Thank you so much. So and I think that's the point, right? And it really does create, and even in the chaos of what we're experiencing now in public education, some real opportunity for innovation in ways that we haven't seen before.
How do you stay fresh? By the way, this guy, entrepreneur, I'm going to call you a quant trader. That's probably wrong, but only because I don't fully understand your business. Media personality. There's a lot going on. I don't know what you're like to live with, but you've got a lot going on. How do you stay so sharp?
I'm not good. Not good. In the husband ranking, I'm about a 0. So, it's funny. It's a great question because I consider myself A, a contrarian, and B, an opportunist. And I think that opportunists love like dysfunction and destabilized, environments. In our business, we call it noise. Like we love noise. And what noise does is just means that there's either fear or there's just opportunity. There's cracks in the system. And that presents, the question was, where does the opportunity come from, or where does the innovation come from in periods of dysfunction? And the simple answer is that is the perfect time. If most entrepreneurs are contrarians, and contrarians love when everybody else is being, a little bit messed up, but that's where you get all your opportunities. So we love building stuff when everything else is falling apart.
Do you know peace, or is chaos peaceful to you?
No, chaos is peaceful. Yeah. It's chaos is, we get, and I'm not just speaking by myself, it's like a lot of entrepreneurs like me, we get very disturbed in peaceful times. We don't know what to do with ourselves.
The great innovators are a little bit ornery. They're irritated by everything that it isn't just so, and they're so irritated that they have to go start a company. Like, I knew cabs sucked, but I didn't know how much they sucked until Travis Kalanick invented Uber. And then you're like, everything about it is barbaric and monstrous and awful, and modern tech is so much better. But it's like, I don't know if Travis ever knows peace. I don't think you do either. How did you, company after company after company, don't do care navigation. Just kidding. I'm buying a care navigation company. You are trailblazing in a way that's like 10 times faster than all carriers that collectively are like $1 trillion of revenue a year. How do you stay at it?
Well, so first of all, I have to comment on the don't know piece, because I think there's this difference between feeling bad about it and just looking at things and saying, there's a better way to do that. It's just not that hard. So, for example, lines drive me crazy. Anytime for anything that you see people waiting in line, it's like, these people are waiting in line to give somebody money, and they can't figure out a way to make it easier for them to do that. That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And that has dragged me into all kinds of things.
And I just play like Candy Crush on my phone. I'm totally fine about it. Like founder, not founder, right there.
Or scrolling through Instagram.
Like, oh, he's never been on Instagram. I mean, it's like crazy.
So this started some time ago. After my first IPO when I was young, I went back to my alma mater, and they asked me to speak about being an entrepreneur, which I thought, it was the first time I ever went back because I had a chip on my shoulder. I was probably the poorest kid there. And I said, I'm never going back until I've done something that's worthwhile. So they invited me, and I was feeling pretty good. And then went up to speak, and the speaker, he gave me a card. This is a real card. I still have it. And it said, Director of Large Gifts. And so I realized that the only reason they actually had me back was they thought I would give money. And it got worse from that because I went to have dinner with a professor who is a mentor and a friend, and he said, how do you think you're doing? I said, well, I had just done an IPO. I had made the first money in my life. And I said, well, I think I'm doing really well. And he was quiet. And so I said, why? And he said, well, we didn't educate you to make money. We educated you to make a difference. And you're a bit of a disappointment. And so it was, and it's still to this day, it's kind of an emotional moment for me because it was life-changing. And I said, gosh, at first I was angry. I was like, he's an academic, and he's jealous, and it just kept eating at me. And then not long after, my niece was diagnosed with diabetes, and then eventually my son was diagnosed. And I said, hey, this health thing matters, and it's a way to make a difference. And so I did a pivot, and I said, I'm going to focus on things that make a difference. And that started with the first healthcare company, which was electronic prescribing, where a lot of people were dying from badly written prescriptions. Only some of you remember the script pads and things that, and we used to joke about the handwriting is so bad from doctors, but people were dying from it, and lots of them all the time. So we had to start fixing that, and then electronic health records. And it was an endless stream, but every time we thought we made progress, we realized how much there was to do. So after Livongo, a few people called and said, why don't you do what you did at Livongo for the rest of healthcare? And we started again.
I'm going to ask this slightly differently than I originally formatted it, but like you all have such, again, impressive companies, but they're built over days that turn to months, that turn to years. When you're at your best, what are you doing? You're not founding companies anymore, you're building them. How do you spend your time? Start with you. Like, what are you doing? I know I have friends that work for portfolio companies he oversees, and he calls them at 11:30 at night because that's when he's getting to it. So like during the day are you with customers? Are you selling? Are you imagining? Like when you're at your best, what are you doing?
Yes. So I travel probably, not exaggerating, 22 days a month on a plane. Customers, a big part of it. At our various facilities that we have our offices around the country and now in Prague as well. Our charitable foundation where we're giving the money away, trying to move the country to the middle. So political things that focus on the things we all can agree on: job creation, healthcare, protecting democracy, things like that. So all those things take a lot of time and are worthy of time and attention, and fitting in between. Then, the other thing I'd say is it's about people. So every business is about people, and it's trying to get people focused on the right thing and clearing the hurdles out of their way. So people will say, well, there's a long process for that. And just an example, we just acquired this company, went down to El Paso. They were looking at a facility, $13 million investment, new facility. I went to see it, looked nice. And I said to the leadership team there, do you mind if I just meet with the team? They were a little thrown off, but no. And so I said to the team, how do you feel about this new facility? They said, well, we think it's going to be terrible. It's a long commute. We like this right here. Why don't we just take the upper floor of this building? To which I said, so that's what you want? Yeah, and we'd like a better kitchen because we cook on Thursdays and a bigger place to meet. And I said, okay. And they said, I came out and there was a realtor there and they were upset and the team was a little upset. And, and they said, well, what's the process now? I said, we just saw the process. That was the process. We just decided we'll take the floor upstairs. We'll build the best kitchen in El Paso. And it's a lot less than $13 million. So I think it's just about getting with the people, solving problems simply, eliminating the bureaucracy.
So as impressive as they are, a theme that we've already heard very clearly from three is how much time is spent listening versus talking or pushing or imagining. Listening. You hear that the salads aren't it's just like listening. So are you starting something new? What are you up to? What do you do day to day? It's like the business number 3, because like why? You're the coffee shop, you did it, but you don't care about it, so what's next?
I still run the same company. I still run Tasty, but in the U.S. But it's so I'm a little different in that I'm really not a good listener. Like I think it's a little misleading that you have to be a good listener. I'm a bad listener. I've spent the last 25 years pretty much just like Glenn. I've spent 25 years on the road. I am in front of customers basically around the clock. It feels like it. Either I'm in front of them on air, or I'm in front of them in a live event, or I'm answering an email. I'm an email junkie, so I don't have any hobbies, but I watch a lot of TikTok and I answer emails around the clock. That's basically that's the cool thing about being a successful innovator and entrepreneur. You get to watch TikTok and answer emails around the clock. It's a little overrated.
You could be president.
We don't have to go there, do we? But the fun thing is, it really is fun. I mean, I don't do it We are actually building new businesses right now, but they're all tech software businesses and kind of really cool stuff. But that's for another day. But I do love the customer interaction. So we are pure. Every business we've built over the last 25 years is pure customer facing. No B2B, all B2C. And so my entire life is basically with this group of a few 100,000 to 1 million people that I've somehow become like kind of the modern pen pal. Like that's what we are now. We're email pals, and that's pretty much my whole life.
I don't buy he's not a good listener. He interviews people for a living, and he may not always accept what they have to say for face value. He may be like, I disagree, and he might have a stink face, but you listen for a living whether you admit it or not.
Well, the funny thing is when you were talking about cutting up your first lettuce, I think I did an interview with you when you guys just started, and you were like saying, I'm in the back cutting up lettuce, packing salads, and I was like,
That was 12 years ago. He clearly listens and remembers.
This business, I was like, this business, I turned to Tony, I'm like, this business is never going to work.
And it's 100% true. And then someone called me after that interview. I got a cold phone call because the customer service actually still went to my cell phone. And someone said, this guy wants to meet with you. And it's not this guy. And he wants to have a meeting. You need to meet him at the Hilton Hotel next Friday, 2 p.m. Be there. And I'm like, who's this guy? How did he hear? He's like, oh, he heard you on Tasty Trade. And he helped me to get in, like, he basically introduced me to people at the airport that were able to help us get our first fridge at O'Hare.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
you never know. And so actually, it probably wouldn't have worked, but we were on your show and then everything else worked out.
There you go.
And that fridge saved me 2 weeks ago, by the way. Thank you. I was starving.
All right, let's dive into some deeper dive questions. Innovation, a lot of it is felt about launching, right? Getting started, then it feels like innovation versus maintaining. Elise, is there a trick to timing the launch of a new product or service or innovation or invention? All of you have been involved in introducing innovations. You're changing the model of what higher ed means. How do you know if you're on time, too early, too late? How do you strategize timing?
So I'm looking right at my chief product officer right now. We talk about this all the time. First of all, I think timing is important, but it depends on what your goal is. Are you looking for broad adoption at launch? Or do you feel like you need to get something out to market and then iterate over time because you see a problem? And once any innovator, on this stage or not, sees a problem, you cannot unsee it, right? And so you are motivated to do something about it. So timing's not always going to be right from my perspective, but you have to think about what your goal is. Do you want wide, broad adoption day one, or do you have the patience to iterate? And it really is around, resources and planning appropriately. You don't want to dump a bunch of resources into something that you know is going to take time to land. It may fall flat at first, but if you have conviction around what you're doing and the problem it's solving, I always say you go after it. And for us, there's a couple of examples. One, the stat is disturbing, but organizations, companies, every 14 seconds there's a company that experiences a ransomware attack. Every 14 seconds. I'm like, that's a problem we probably need to solve by getting more people educated so that they can be cyber defenders, is what we call them. Because there's just not enough of them. I mean, you hear this on the Hill all the time, right? And we're trying to solve this problem, just like the nursing shortage. And so we knew that we needed to do something about this. And we didn't think that it would just be through the traditional education model. We knew it had to come from experiential learning. You hear hiring managers say, yes, skills-based experience is all that we're looking for now. Forget education. And then it's funny, I sit in a room with CEOs. I'm like, how many of you changed your job descriptions to say no bachelor's degree required? And nobody raises their hand, right? But I do think there is something to be said around having that experience while you're in school. Because for our learners, we educate adult learners. And many of them are working already, but they know they want to either transition into a new career completely outside of what they're doing today or get promoted. And so they can't just, drop all of that and go get the experience by, interning. we need things like what we call the cyber range, what we built and sort of borrowed a little bit too, where we have students in classes actually dealing with missions that are very scary, by the way, because they imitate real life and what's happening every 14 seconds. So I think higher education needs to think about that. But when you think about timing, it's really hard to predict when the right time is. So you have to know what your goals are.
So I'm curious. It's like, is it a matter of like how hard or easy the change is, and then how big or small the opportunity is? Or do you all just like, my gut's my gut, I'm driven by vision? Quick, like, is it like
use data.
I follow my gut like a dog after a scent, or I have some mathematical constraints around how long you're allowed to go? 12 years, what is it? You just think it's gonna be?
It depends on the situation. So sometimes it's like, oh, this is a really big bet. Let's spend a lot of time. I better really be right. How much are people telling me this is stupid? And then, but other times it's like, no, this has to be right. I'm going to grind on this until we figure out what it is that we're missing. And so it's very situational. But I think there's usually a core set of data that you're like anchored on. So with fresh food from a vending machine, it was like, I think everyone shops based on what tastes good, what's more convenient, and what's cheaper. And people are like, but they're gonna hate food in a vending machine. I'm like, but if it's cheaper and more convenient and tastes good, like that should work. And so that really kept me going. But I think there's always some core truth that you're focused on validating.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear other people. Gut, a formula, investor expectations, like what governs how long you run?
I think it's somewhat gut and data driven because, when you're out there thinking about a new vision, everybody, you're going to get so many no's and so many people telling you that it's dumb that you got to just keep pressing forward. I know when I, originated the idea for LEAP, I had, was running New Schools for Chicago. I launched New Schools for Chicago, as you mentioned. And, we had opened about 80 schools. It was at the point of, look, we are not going to be able to transform education fast enough by just opening new schools models, even as innovative and as interesting as they are, and that we really have to kind of bridge over into technology and leveraging personalized learning. And, in as much, and again, some of the data informing this was, there was an emerging sector that was growing in the ed tech space. There was a lot more pressure on educators and principals to increase learning, increase performance, and they reached a plateau. So, we kind of used some of that, but even still, I mean, my organization was a subsidiary of the Civic Committee, and I could not convince the CEO of the Civic Committee to shift gears. So I said, look, can I take a third of my time and, think through this? And so I wrote a paper to the Gates Foundation about the future of learning, what we needed to do to scale innovative technologies in schools across America if we were really serious about accelerating learning for our kids. And they gave me the seed funding to launch LEAP. So I left the Civic Committee and launched LEAP Innovations.
Gut data, gut.
So I'm in a pretty, like everybody up here, we're in competitive businesses. And in my industry, in fintech and finance and all that stuff, everything's been pretty much commoditized. Like there's very little inefficiency. And I think that's pretty common. And so in a world of not that much inefficiency, I believe that you have to just be the fastest. So it's not as much about gut as we will throw anything against the wall and just do. It's all about who makes the quickest decisions and who executes the fastest. So, because that's how competitive the world is now. So it's really, for us, it's just about speed and absolute taking risk. Like I can't handle people that won't take a shot or won't take risk. So we're just about taking risk and making quick decisions. That's all this really is. It's not really, everybody to a certain extent is data driven and it's quantitative and everything we do in life is probabilistic. Everything has a statistical background and in our world, we price everything on a distribution curve. But that said, it's all about speed and just taking a shot.
So I'd say gut, but I got to comment on speed because Mark Zuckerberg said, in Silicon Valley, we move fast and we break things. And one of my colleagues, Hemant Taneja, wrote an article that said the end of move fast and break things is called healthcare, because the things that you break are people, so you can't do that. So you have to learn to innovate quickly but carefully, and that was something new that had to be learned. That said, when I decided to start Transcarent, somebody pointed out that there's this organization called Haven, which was JP Morgan, Amazon, and Berkshire Hathaway, and they just failed. So you think you can do this? And so anybody who was smart would have said no. And anybody who looked at the data would have seen the kind of littering of 20 years of people saying they're going to fix healthcare and not doing it. And so I didn't look at the data. I'm not that smart, but we decided to do it. So it really was about gut. And there's this statement. I'm a big collector of quotes. There's a statement on my wall from the noted philosopher Jerry Garcia that says somebody has to do something, and it's just pathetic that it has to be us. And I kind of feel like that in healthcare. It's like, who's going to do this if we won't do it? Because it's not any of the existing stakeholders. They're all doing too well, doing the wrong things. So, we're going to give it a shot, and it's all gut.
I'm supposed to ask for audience questions, and you're allowed, but also I'll keep going if you don't mind. So someone's going to stop me, but I have a few more questions. I'm enjoying this far too much.
You're so good at this.
I'm the audience.
Better
I just
than
get to
he
be up
was
here.
when
I
he
get
did
to
this.
sit up here and be peppering you with questions. I want to go back to Phyllis. Innovation isn't just in what. It's how. You can be incredibly innovative in how you approach a product or service, the way you lead or hire or build culture or kind of swim against the grain for rules in an industry. What are some impactful ways you've gone against the norm besides expecting that kind of capital can be raised, that kind of change? I mean, the end results are there, but what are some insights from the how you got there that the audience can take home?
I think it's about learning how to leverage and motivate people to catch onto your vision. One example that comes to mind is you guys heard of Civics Consulting Alliance? I named CCA. So it was called FRAC way back in the day when I was running it. And it was this pro bono consulting arm of the Civic Committee, right? And, when I started, Mayor Daley was working on crazy, he was taking on all these crazy ideas. I'm going to take over the Chicago Housing Authority and, take over this $1.5 billion plan to, tear down and rebuild all the public housing in Chicago. Who would do that? And so, I was kind of at the point of, when I came in, I'm like, look, we need management consultants to work on this stuff. And so we went to McKinsey, the head of McKinsey at the time, because I knew if I could get McKinsey, all the rest of the guys would come. And I convinced them to come on my board and donate pro bono services to help us advance this stuff, right? This is in the early 2000s. And then I said, okay, great. He said, yeah. Okay, great. Come with me to BCG. He's like, really? You want me to come to BCG? And it's like, yeah. Because you know why? Because I knew if the head of McKinsey went in and told the head of BCG he was on this board, you better know it. He was coming. Then we went over to Bain. Then we went to everywhere else, right? So I think part of this is understanding how to navigate and motivate and hit the needle with people to get them on board toward your vision.
And the power of asking. That's an insane ask. And you went ahead and did it. And what'd they do? They said yes.
They all
I'll
said
go
yes.
to my arch nemesis that I fight on
Deloitte,
every
Bain,
deal.
all of them came.
Power of asking.
Absolutely.
Luke, there's a that was pretty bad. Badass. Luke, there's a difference between having a thesis about if it should work with the exception of it shouldn't work. But then you have to build a company of people who can help you scale it. What are the lessons learned in sort of marrying the mission and the way forward, the people part of it, scaling that?
It changes at every stage. So the first person I hired was working with me in the kitchen, and that was the main reason they were there. And then I needed someone who could pitch in on a sales call or fix the machine if I needed to. And so their main qualification was if I ask you to deliver food to the 7-Eleven at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, are you going to say yes? And they would say yes, and I'd say, you're hired. And then we needed like 2 people like that. So it was just like, are you willing to work almost for free? And the answer was yes, and so they were hired. And then, you get out of that stage and kind of fast forward to now in the evolution. It's really, there's a combination of like, we're solving this really hard, big problem of how do you make fresh, healthy food as accessible as a candy bar? And that still very much frames like everything that we do. And the scale of it is something that is very appealing to candidates. They're coming in with really rich expertise in an area that we never could have afforded at the beginning, but we're getting better talent than we otherwise would because they're interested in the problem that we're trying to solve. And then we still have enough of the people who were here when it was like, so you're willing to work almost for free as a side hustle. And so those 2 groups together, it's a really nice balance of like, we are all in this together to solve this problem, and how do we do that? And I think that's like the best part about having a mission-driven business. The one right before this was a grease lubricant manufacturer, and I literally couldn't get a person to apply for a job there to save my life. So I was like, the next company has to have a
I think
mission.
you missed many marketing opportunities. I could see it.
Yeah, but it was like the mission is a big part.
So let's go back to Glenn. Really, 2 massive impact companies, but so much of being an entrepreneur isn't having the best plan and having everything go to plan. It's how you recover when things don't go to plan, how resilient you are, how quickly you pop back up. Can you tell us about a failure you may have not openly talked about before?
So I think part of this is, in my mind, I haven't really failed. But I've learned a tremendous amount. And I really believe that. And, we've been lucky to mint, I think it's more than 30 CEOs from my various companies. And in fact, I'm very proud that at Livongo, the first 2 CEOs out of Livongo, both running companies worth more than $500 million, were women. Really exciting. And then 4 presidents that followed them. But I joke, but it's not really a joke, and that is they've seen us try a tremendous amount of things and fail at them. But it wasn't a failure. It was like, okay, we learned that didn't work. We learned this didn't work. And they go to their next business and they aren't afraid. And, fear is the biggest challenge that any of us have. That is, you're worried about it. I mean, the great news about doing something quickly is you can do a lot of it. So we can do 2 or 3 things faster than most people can do 1. So there's a great, actually the most famous inventor in the country, a guy named Dean Kamen. Many of you know him for inventing the insulin pump or the artificial arm that many of our veterans have to wear if they lose an arm, or the Segway, which is not his best invention. But Dean invented a clock, and it came from this thing that people said to him. They said to him regularly, well, 2 steps forward, but 1 step back. And that was meant to be kind of a negative. And he said, but the reality is that's 3 times the experience, and it's still 1 step forward. So why are you making that sound bad? So he has this clock that goes 3 steps forward, 1 step back, and it keeps perfect time. And that's kind of the answer. So, I don't see it as failure. There's another quote, that this woman, Ashley Brilliant, says, and she says, why don't we grow braver as we grow older? Why are we so scared to try things? And it's because of that word failure. Nobody wants to fail. Well, we don't fail. We just do a lot of stuff. Sometimes it doesn't work. You say, don't do that again. And I think at our companies, and there's a few people in the audience who have been victim of this, when you do something wrong, there's this old saying that says, correct in private, praise in public. And we do the opposite. When somebody makes a mistake, we tell everybody about it. And that way, everybody learns. And when somebody has a big win, we don't say, oh, that salesperson, they closed it. No, it's the whole team. Whole team won together. But you've got to get a thick skin to be able to say, oh, we didn't fail. We just found a lot of ways that wouldn't work. And we'll keep trying until we do. And so, I really, in my mind, I don't say, oh my God, I failed. I say, you know what, that didn't work. Let's try something different. And let's keep trying until we get it.
Yeah, I ask my kids I have 3 daughters. They're very, very, very good skiers. And every day after they're out skiing, I say, did you fall? And the point is, if you didn't fall at least once in the day, you weren't trying radical enough things. Because I heard Sam Yegan say that in his performance reviews of all of his direct reports, they must list their failures. And if they aren't big enough for the past quarter, they weren't trying to change the world hard enough. And I always say, like, look, I get to sit by amazing titans, and like everyone either has imposter syndrome or they're sociopaths. And I think what you just heard is there's a third path, which I'm gonna think about and like take with me, which is maybe it's just a matter of better definitions. Lessons, not failures. I'm smarter, not an idiot. That maybe if we could program ourselves, that would naturally come our way.
Amanda, I just have to say one other thing. When we were on our Series B in Livongo, John Doerr, who may be the most famous venture investor in the world, and has made a lot of great picks. And so Kleiner Perkins decided to do our Series B. And John came up afterwards and I shook his hand and he said, I just want to tell you, you've done amazing things. And he listed all these things, and I was kind of sitting up and feeling really good. This is John Doerr. And he said, and excuse my French, and he said, and by the way, you should just understand, none of that means shit to me. I said, I'm sorry? None of that means anything to me. And so I said, oh. And he said, we're investing in your future. Don't look back. That's a fool's errand. Go forward. And so, I love these wonderful introductions, but the only thing that I'll get judged on is what happens going forward, not what I did. I don't want to be that person who said, remember what he did when he was young? No. That's, this is all about what we do to go forward. So, and the only way you go forward is to take that step. And it's scary sometimes, but you just have to do it. And if you do it with great people, something goes wrong, you just laugh. And you say, oh my God, what a mess we made of this one. Let's fix it, because we don't have any alternative.
Tom, let's talk about feelings. What's your biggest fear?
Wrong person.
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe
Wrong
it.
person.
What's your biggest fear as a leader or entrepreneur, and how do you confront it? And I don't say that there isn't a fear. There's some fear. It's like fear of what you can't control. Fear
My
of what?
fear is if I fall skiing, I can't get up. That's my fear. But go ahead. What's
What's your fear? How do you confront it?
I mean, this is going to sound weird, but I don't know that I'm definitely not scared of failing, because just a whole segment on failing. And I just had to say one thing as I was saving it. I do speaking all around the world, nonstop. That's all I do is talk to people. And one of the shows I did 2 years ago was called the Bad Trader Tour. And the whole tour was every losing trade that we've made as a group over the last 40 years. And it's nonstop for 3 straight hours of every horrible investment we've made, not a single winning investment. And it just goes on and on, from professional wrestlers to restaurants to everything you can imagine. And it was probably one of the best tours we've ever done.
I'm dying to know, who'd you invest in?
What?
Ric Flair, who's the investor? The wrestler.
The wrestler? Well, it was a guy that didn't make it. I mean, if he had made it, it would have been a good trade. And it was a bad trade. So, he broke his back jumping off the top rope in training, and that was $100,000 out the window. But anyway, it's like, whatever. It's just, the funny thing about the show was that people loved it because it gave them this, like, a crazy, they felt better about everything that they've done that hasn't worked
You're
out.
humanized. You become more accessible, whereas the perfection of your accolades are like,
I don't want to hear people talk about their winners. I want to hear everybody talk about their losers. And because that's the cool thing. How do you recover from the losers? How do you build $1 billion company after you've lost 40 straight times? That kind of thing. And I think that's, but the fear thing for me, I really don't think that at least I don't think about things from a fear side. Maybe it's because I've been around a long time. I guess after you've survived enough decades, you're like, okay, what am I going to be worried? I don't have that.
What inspires you?
It's at this point in my life, it's legacy. So the reason that, I just turned 68 and I want to build one more company. And we've already started, actually. And
Because the coffee shop was nothing. That ain't a thing.
no, the coffee shop is it's attached to the coffee shop. But because like at some point it's just a legacy thing and it's kind of cool. Like that to me is like, that's the neatest thing you can do is just keep building stuff and just keep. I love to create challenges for people. I found that's the single greatest thing you can give to a group of people that want to be like, that's why nobody ever leaves us, because we're always challenging them. And we're always telling them basically, I love giving people tasks that they can't do, that nobody can do. Like, and to see if somebody can actually do it. So we give ridiculously impossible tasks or really hard things to basically everybody. And if they don't want to try it, then they usually, doesn't work
I
out.
have so many questions for you about how you hire and how you set that expectation, because I feel like a lot of employers spend a tremendous amount of time trying to create and assure psychological safety, not risk.
We're an HR nightmare. Yes.
HR tech company. He is a nightmare. He really that's amazing. So we're almost to the speed round part of this, but I'd love to hear source of grit or source of inspiration. Do you know peace, Elise?
I don't. And I have to be honest because people know me in this room. So I think the breaking my ankle, being told by a doctor that I will never run long distances again or ever, shows you that I don't know peace, because I could have just said, okay, fine, I'm going to, be a cyclist or a swimmer.
Know when you want yes is your fuel. Is that fair?
Yes, that's very fair. And I think that if it's worth doing, it's probably not going to be easy. And that's my motto. And so
Birth order? What birth order are you?
birth order,
Do you have siblings?
I do. And I'm, so this is a good question because now it's going to all make sense. I'm the first child.
Okay. Okay. Luke, source of grit, source of inspiration. Do you know peace? I know you. The answer is not really. You don't know peace. But how do you get inspired? How do you find grit?
Yeah, I'm like one of 7, and I fall asleep in a crowded room faster than in a quiet one. So for me, I'm very motivated by I like proving something and being like, you're like, this will never work. And I'm like, it will. I swear to God, it will. And so that is very motivating to me. Like if you want me to really do something, like tell me that I can't do it, and that will get me to want to try to do it.
Contrarian.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like stuck in this loop where you're like, oh my God, now I've got like 12 years in and all I wanted to do was sell one salad from a vending machine. But so there's that part of that personality disorder. But I think that's like, and then marrying that with something good helps me feel better about that. So.
Phyllis, you know peace. Do you know peace?
No, I don't. And, it's probably not healthy, but what gives me inspiration is just I'm really pissed off. CPS celebrates this 85% graduation rate every year, woohoo, when only 15% of our high school students will ever earn a 2 or 4 year degree. That pisses me off. And that should piss off everybody in this room. So no, I do not have peace. And I think it's something what Glenn was saying. It's like, especially like in education and healthcare, these big, complex sectors that are just not fixed. There's always that next problem to solve. So I have no peace.
And pain is peace, right? Like running and then finishing a marathon and being, you know what I need to do now? I need to go bike all the time. I mean, it's like, is pain peace for you?
No, I think doing things, accomplishing things, I think of it as, you get to spend a day outside, generally in beautiful weather. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? You get to run and swim and bike. And it would be better if you trained for it. I give you that. But so sometimes that's a little tougher. But again, I think if you're working on something that matters and you're doing it with people who, are great people, but we have to solve these important problems. And there's something in my core that says, I was lucky enough to get to this point, and you got to bring everybody else along. And that's been core to the country we have. And I think it's really important. So I think whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, I mean, these are absolutely critical to get right. And we've done a very poor job and we have to fix it. And frankly, ought to be everybody's concern, like Phyllis said. I mean, we seem to accept these things as if it's okay that people don't get educated in this country or that don't get health care in this country. And we're in the wealthiest country in the world. It's not okay. And we have to be angry
And more
about
easily
it.
get soda than a healthy meal.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do speed round this way, then this way, then this way. 3 questions. Quick. What's one innovation you cannot live without?
GPS. I cannot imagine having a map on the side of the road pulling. You think waiting in line is a waste of time? Sitting on the side
GPS
of the
is
road trying
a
to.
great answer. Luke,
Uber.
Phyllis?
Amazon and ChatGPT.
That's a really good question. One innovation I can't live without. I really can't go without cell phone.
Perfect.
Cell phone, because it gives you access to everything else.
Okay. You get a call from an employee, a customer, and an investor or a trustee at the exact same time. Which one do you take first and why? Employee, customer, or investor, trustee?
Customer.
Lifeblood.
Customer, lifeblood.
Customer.
Is this like the customer service hotline or like my biggest
You,
my
your
biggest-
personal cell phone, 3
like,
calls at once.
I mean, unless it's like a big partner, I would think like a business, like a Walmart calls me. I'm like, I'll take that call.
Okay.
So, but if an individual calls, I think I have to talk to the investor first.
Investor, interesting. Elise.
I'm going to go with customer because without them, you don't have employees, you don't have investors, you don't have trustees.
Last, if you had to write the definitive book on life's lessons for innovators, what would the title be?
Build it like you mean it.
Get ready.
Never give up.
Control what you can.
Well, Ashley's writing my next book with me, but I would say resilience.
Thank you all for being so awesome and showing up and not just sharing, but teaching and inspiring. It's my job to hand it back to Mr. Luke Tanna now. Thank you all for showing up.